Hey ladies, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the Abandoned Pregnant podcast with me, Kandy Dolor. I've got a very good show for you today, so I'm just going to get straight into it. Okay ladies, so joining me today on the Abandoned Pregnant podcast is Rodney Mueller from Missouri in the US, and he is a life coach for men who would like to make self-improvements after growing up with their fathers being absent in their lives. So that's just my brief introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Rodney now, and he can tell you a lot more about who he is and about his work. So hi Rodney, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you all. I suppose there is when I think about what I do and the work I do, the unifying factor is often that they are people who are overachievers, which I say is code for whatever we do is never good enough. And mostly what I help them with is creating success, and not only in business but also in their life, so that they're fulfilled. And the connection there is that many of the people that I work with who either grew up with an absent or distant father, they tend to be in that category of overachiever, which for some reasons I'm sure we'll get into later.
Yes.
But yeah, that's kind of the work that I do. I got into it. Usually people like to know how I became a coach. And I certainly didn't plan on being a coach, but when I was in my late 20s, I had achieved a lot of the things that I thought would make me happy. I had a 10-year successful career in the military, and was finishing an MBA, had met my wife, bought a house.
That's brilliant.
Making six figures, all the things I thought would make me happy. And what I found is that not only was I very emotionally disconnected, but I was exhausted, driving many hours a day. And somehow I always found myself in two or three activities. And my friend was going through a program at the time, very intense coach training program. And mostly to develop my own leadership and to kind of find my own personal fulfillment. I took that program, which launched a whole new journey in my absent father healing, but also a new career for myself. And after a few years, I finally got the courage to quit my job, and I've been doing coaching professionally now for about 8 years, full time, and I coach a lot of cool people. So that's the short story.
That's brilliant. Love what you said about people who've grown up without fathers tending to be overachievers. I mean, that's definitely one for the books. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm excited to particularly talk to your audience, because I think that, I'm sure that, I know for sure that my mom, she was abandoned while pregnant.
Okay.
And I know that she was really concerned about me and having a father figure. And one of the things that was a gift of that experience is that, and why I think many of us are overachievers, is that we're so determined to take care of ourselves and be independent, and
yes.
So that gives us this insatiable drive inside.
Definitely.
And that certainly was the case for me. That led me to a lot of success, even though I didn't come from much. So.
No, I definitely agree with you there. There is that push, that drive to succeed, because, a part of you wants to show the absent father, well, look what I did without you. And actually, I can't wait for you to go into your story, because after speaking to you last week, I thought about a lot of what you said, and I connected some dots for myself, and I thought, wow, this conversation was so powerful, because I had quite a few realizations. So please share your story with us about your father and your experiences.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, my mother and my father, my biological father, as some of us call them, they were dating in St. Louis in 1980, and my mom found out out she was pregnant. She was in her early 30s at the time, and my father was in town, I think, at the local VA hospital, getting some treatment. I think he was also a long time ago in the military. And basically, when she told him that she was pregnant, that was the last that she saw of him. And I was born October of 1981, and until I was 13, I had never seen a picture of my father. I didn't even know what he looked like, except for my mom claimed that he looked or resembled like John Travolta. So in my mind, my father looked like John Travolta.
That's got to be really hard, though, because there must have been moments where, when you're alone, you think to yourself, well, what does my dad look like? Or maybe looking in the mirror and trying to identify, parts of yourself that might come from your father. Did you ever experience those things at all?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that's weird about having the father completely absent is that it just feels like a hole, sort of an invisible hole, right? Because it's not like they were there and then gone. They were just not present.
Yes.
And I think that's why I like to really talk about the topic, because I think that's the case for a lot of people, that we sort of diminish the impact because, it wasn't a dramatic event that they, we saw them die or something.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But the pain of that is still really present.
Exactly, because it's like a part of you is missing, and you don't know how you can actually find out anything about that missing link, if, especially if you're being rejected and they don't want to know you. It's like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I do remember walking around, though, as a kid, because I was like, wow, I could literally have walked past my own father and not known. So I remember looking at people and thinking, wow, that person could be my parent. So what happened is, a year prior, I had never had any contact with my father's family. We tried to find him and all that over the years, but never had any contact, and never even as much as a picture. And a year earlier, I got a call. My mom got a call out of the blue from my uncle, who was my father's brother, saying that he had found out about me and that my father was very sick. And we ended up traveling down to Arkansas. It's about 4 hours south of where we were living. And I didn't get to meet my father at that time, but I found out I had a couple sisters, and I met my uncle. It was all very weird. If you can imagine a 12-year-old, meeting his uncle and his sisters, newly found. Yeah. Just a strange experience for such a young, of course, when I was 12, I thought I was a man, but, such a little boy.
Yeah.
And a year later, to get to the story about me, my father, I got a call out of the blue, just randomly on a Saturday morning. I was 13, and the phone rang, and I answered, and this person said, "This is your father buried."
Wow.
So mind you, I've never seen a picture, never met this person. I just get a call out of the blue, and it's my father. And
that must have been shocking for you.
Looking back on it now, I think that was really shocking. I think that, to think about my own daughter at 13 having to sort of manage that level of emotion,
yes.
And understanding would be something. So not only did he call me out of the blue and say, "This is your father," but he also proceeded to tell me that he had cancer and AIDS, wow, and had 6 months to live, and that he wanted to meet me. So that was in November of 94, and a month later, when I had my school break, it must have been in 8th grade, we drive down again to Arkansas 4 hours to meet my father, and I I don't know what I was thinking, but I must have been nervous because I didn't need to shave at the time, but I was like made my mom pull over to let me shave in a bathroom. I think that somehow that, it's like a manly sort of thing. I have no idea.
Definitely.
But then we pull up to the door, and I knocked on the door, and that's where I met my father.
Wow.
It was when people ask about the experience of it, I felt mostly in shock. Like, even thinking about it now, it's just kind of a numbing experience. I remember we played some video game, and I think he ordered pizza. So at least we shared pizza in common. I love pizza.
Did you speak about the past much? Did he apologize to you for his absence at all?
I kind of blocked that out of my mind until you asked me that question, actually. But I do remember that he was apologetic and I think crying at some point.
Do you feel like it was genuine?
What was that?
Sorry. Do you feel like his remorse was genuine, or do you feel like it could have partially been because of his ill health?
I both at that time, and I met him, several other times. Before he passed away about 8 years ago. And what I found was that he wasn't very capable of empathy and connection. So although he was apologizing, I mean, how do you apologize for that, right? Like, no, there was no words that he could say that would fill that gap. Yes. And so in a way, and not to his fault, really. It's just that, you apologize when you accidentally back into someone's car. Apologizing for being an absent parent is not really something that happens in words, right?
Yes.
And thankfully, I realized that I didn't need anything from him to forgive him. So in that moment, I think I was 13. I probably thought it was kind of weird. I was like, what is going on here, right? Like, I'm kind of holding space for this stranger that is my father that is crying and apologizing. I don't recall it having any meaning to me, actually.
That's understandable. I guess at 13, you're still young and you're probably, trying to take everything in, and that's a lot to take in at 13 years old. That really is. And, as you get older, your perspective changes. So it must have changed a lot over the years. And, that must have been really difficult for you at that time.
Yeah, I think it was probably more difficult than I certainly let on. And, when I think about my attitude over the years and my healing process with my absent father, it started with, as a child, when I was like 6, 7, 8, and my mom was always very honest with me, which I really, really appreciated. Like, she never said anything bad about my father, which I'm like, wow, that is extraordinary.
Yeah.
No judgment if you do, because I mean that was kind of a shitty deal what he did. But she also always told me, like, when I asked where's my dad, why don't I have one? She was always very honest, and that was really a gift to me. But it started with my relationship to him, and forgiveness was like, it started with, as a kid, always, I said whenever I met my father, I was going to kick him in the balls. Up until I met him, and of course I didn't, although that would have made for a much better story. To then, I remember getting into my teenage years, and I started to really, I was always a big Oprah fan, and I was always reading personal development, and so I remember I read this book when I was a late teenager called called Soul Stories by Gary Zukav. And the gift that gave me was that a new perspective on feelings, on sadness and anger. And, I kind of intellectually healed myself, meaning like in my head, I was like, oh, there's no more impact. I'm over it, my life is better off because of this person, this father not being in my life.
Yeah.
To then having that pain show up in other ways in my early 20s, whether it's, drinking too much alcohol, or feeling disconnected or sad, but not really knowing what to call it because I didn't have real access to my feelings. To my late 20s and into my business, and this is the gift that becoming a coach has given me in my healing process, was I got to a point where in my work I couldn't get to the next level of success, and I realized that the reason was because I hadn't healed my relationship to myself or my value, and that was directly related to healing my relationship to my father. And the last piece I want to share about that is the biggest gift that I've gotten in forgiveness and in healing that experience, and it's not done. I think that the misnomer that we tell ourselves is that someday we will be over it, and I don't think there's any gift in being over it. It's like it can be our biggest lesson if we allow it to be. So the thing that I found that was most crucial to accessing forgiveness, and when we think about why would we forgive the absent father, the reason to forgive is because as we hold on to that pain, it stays with us. It's not hurting them. Mm-hmm. And I'm careful about talking about forgiveness also because, it was through a long journey to get to a place to be able to forgive. Yes. It wasn't just I forgive that person. It was therapy and coaching and a spiritual recovery work that got me to the place where I could get there. But the thing that is the biggest gift is empathy. Empathy to me is what accesses forgiveness. And, as I started to learn about my father's experience, my father's upbringing, I realized that he didn't have much of an opportunity to do something different, to be different in the world. He was in and out of foster homes as a kid. Okay. He was sexually abused. His father was murdered in 1980,
that's terrible.
The year before I was born. And so those are like just three things that I know, right? And when you think about that, I realized that this was a man that was in pain. Definitely. He just didn't have the capability to be the father that I yearned for.
Yes, it sounds like your dad definitely had some serious past issues that he was struggling to deal with, which affected him being a father to you. And I guess with all the weight that he was carrying of that baggage, even if he was in your life, what kind of positive example would he be able to set with you for you with all of that, and him probably not having any therapy to deal with it, and it stemming from such a young age, from being in foster homes. That's some really deep stuff. And I can understand completely why you would choose to forgive your father. And there is always an underlying reason for a father being absent. I do believe that. And we were having this conversation the other day when I said to you that that I try to get the emotions of women right, because like you said, forgiveness is the key, but it is a long journey and you go through so many emotions. And a lot of the time when I try to speak about forgiveness, some people think, well, I'm angry, don't you understand my pain? And it's hard to, talk about forgiveness constantly when, especially for women who are abandoned during their pregnancies, when there's so much anger involved. And another thing you said about your mum, you know, not saying a bad word about your dad, even her taking you on this road trip to go and see your dad, knowing, you know, that he's unwell and how he treated her, that, you know, that took some heart. And I respect her completely for that. There's so many mothers out there who would have said, well, this is his karma. You know, he abandoned me pregnant. He's never come to see you. Why should we go and see him now? So I think you have such a powerful story, and your good heart and you being able to forgive your father probably comes from your mum, because she was so, you know, she dealt with the situation so well. And so there was, I mean, I don't know you personally, so I don't know if you ever experienced any anger throughout your journey, but I'd say that my guess would be that you had a strong role model, your mum, you know, to lean on. And like you said, she was very open with you. She was honest with you. She had conversations with you about not having a father, and she told you, most importantly, the reason why. And I feel like that is so important, that we talk to our children about the reasons why their fathers are absent, and that we are honest with them, because then they'll be able to accept the situation and the reality of it for what it is, from, you know, the age that they want to know about it from. So you really do have a powerful story, and you know, your journey to forgiveness must have been a really long one, but the fact that you've got through it and that you're now able to help other people and just sharing your story as well, and it's really encouraging and inspiring. And I think that, you know, even being able to talk about your mum's experience of her being abandoned during pregnancy, you know, it could have been very easy for you to go the other way, because you're a family man now, aren't you? You're married, you have your daughter, and I think that's so lovely, because there's so many men out there who would have just repeated the pattern of their father being absent, and especially growing up without a father present yourself, you know, it's very easy for that to happen. So the fact that you went the other way, you know, that's great, really is.
Well, and I feel lucky to have found my way, you know, and I think that certainly, you know, one of the things I think about, like, not only, you know, my father was dysfunctional. You know, he was, because of the pain he experienced in childhood that was unresolved, he was a dysfunctional adult. And, you know, that means there's addiction, and obviously, you know, a person that is in the level of pain that can abandon their child, and abandon, you know, their partner who is pregnant, that's a deep level of pain. And one of the gifts of him being out of my life was, like, that dysfunction wasn't prevalent in each moment of my life. And so, you know, I think that one of the things that is important is, you know, having healthy people around your child is important, right? And just because they're the dad doesn't mean, you know, and I mean, that's for everybody else to figure out what works for their family, but not having him in my life was a gift to me. It gave me an opportunity to find myself and find the resources and take my own path and journey. So.
That's definitely, and now you're able to also help others as well, so it's definitely a gift. I can understand exactly why you'd say that. It is one. So Rodney, would you mind if I asked you a few questions now, from a man's perspective, about abandonment during pregnancy, and why you might while you might think some men do this, why, even if they've been in relationships for a long time, why do they run away as soon as a woman tells them that they're pregnant?
Absolutely, yeah. You want to start with that one?
Yes, please. That's my first question.
All right. So there's a couple of things that I want to share about this. So first is just my experience of working with a lot of men and my own experience about why do they leave? Like, how could that be possible? Like, I've probably spent my whole life thinking about how is it possible, especially becoming a father now, like, how could you leave your baby?
Yeah.
How? Right? So I want to talk about that, but then I also want to share my own experience of my wife becoming pregnant.
Great.
So the first part is I firmly believe, and I did an episode on the Absent Father podcast about this specifically, why do dads leave? And what I believe is that when any parent, even that absent father, when they're aware that they're going to be a parent, that there's this internal commitment, a desire to be a great parent. And not just a great parent, but a perfect parent. And I really feel like any parent that we know, like, we know that, like, if you said what is good enough for your kid as a parent, most of us, if we were really honest, we would be like, there really is no enough. And we kind of just automatically carry guilt about how we are as a parent, regardless of how great we are.
Yeah.
Like, we find a way to beat ourselves up as a parent. And what I find particularly with men is that they have this deep commitment to be perfect, which I know may be really hard to believe, but trust me, it's deep, deep, deep down in there. And simultaneously, they have this experience of themselves as being incapable, fundamentally incapable, and fundamentally not good enough. So when you bring those things together, you bring together, I really want to be perfect at this, but fundamentally I'm incapable. So every time you're present to a child or the concept of being a father, you are present to a deep level of shame and how you are not enough. And so, like most human beings, this is not an excuse of just walking through a human experience. Like, it's like when you have somebody who is you perceive as perfect and you're not feeling good about yourself today, you don't want to be with that perfect person. Or if you are feeling really bad and out of shape, nobody wants to go to the gym and hang out with the personal trainer crowd. And so
True.
I think at a basic level, right, like, and again, it's absolutely not an excuse. It's just that I think there's a deep level of pain and there's an avoidance of that. And I think the longer you avoid it, the more painful it becomes. So the easier it is when it's a day that you're gone, it becomes easier for it to be 2, and then a week, and then a month, and then a year, and then it's insurmountable to come back after a year with that much guilt and that much pain and an unwillingness to get help or support through that, as most men are unwilling.
Yes.
I think that's why they leave and why they stay absent.
Do you know, you have explained that so well, and I agree with every word you said, and I do feel like the result of both issues, the perfectness, running away from what they feel isn't a perfect setup because they want the perfect setup, even though maybe their actions might not be working towards creating that perfect setup, but and also the fact that they feel like women, because I know a lot of men feel like sometimes they might have got the wrong woman pregnant, and they run away from that. I feel like it's got to do with their egos as well, you know, like, well, I don't want anybody to see that this is the woman that I've been with because I feel like I can do much better for myself, and they run off. Or, you know, I don't have enough money to protect, you know, to provide for this child, and I don't want this woman to know this, or, you know, and run off. Or I don't want to commit to this. You know, there's so many reasons, and I feel like a lot of them come down to the male ego. What would you say about that? Do you agree with me, or do you think it's something else?
Well, I can certainly see on the other side of that, right? Like, and you know what I'm talking about. I think it's oftentimes I don't think that the man is aware of that they're having this experience.
Okay. Yes.
I think that it's a subconscious happening. But I would say, you know, in some ways, it almost doesn't matter why they're not present. You know, why they're not there for the child that they fathered. Because you know, I kind of then think about the mothers and, you know, what they deserve.
Yes.
What they deserve in a partner. What they deserve as a person to have in their life. You know, and so I think that absolutely the ego probably does play some role in that. You know, but I don't think that I don't think it's true. I think it's I think that
like it's all an illusion, maybe, in their mind.
Yeah.
That they've created for themselves.
Right. And I think it still stems from not being good enough. It's like, I'm not enough, so I'm trying to be enough externally. It's the same thing with my car doesn't represent me.
Yes.
So I'm not enough inside, so I need a better car, or I need a better house, or a better job, or more money.
What about narcissists? Do you think that a lot of absent fathers and deadbeat dads who come in and out of their children's lives are narcissistic men? Because a lot of
I would probably defer to a therapist or a psychiatrist to determine, you know, who is narcissistic or not. Right? That's like a specific thing.
But do you think that they have narcissistic traits then? That they carry
maybe being like self-centered or only focused on themselves,
immature and stuff like that, because a lot of absent fathers and deadbeat dads are, you know, being connected to being narcissists, and you can kind of see where that does come from. You know, so what's your opinion on? As I do understand what you mean. You can't diagnose anybody, but as in the traits of narcissism and absent fathers, what do you think about the connections?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to dodge the question, but what I want to say is that I think that all of this comes down to people that are in pain. So, you know, find me a narcissist and then tell me their childhood.
Yes.
And I'll guarantee you that there's something that occurred there that was highly dysfunctional, highly inappropriate, at the very least. At the most, high levels of trauma and abuse. And so when it comes to all of the ways in which it shows up later in life, at the heart of it is pain in childhood. And so similarly, you know, we talked about this. I don't know what the statistics are on absent fathers who had absent fathers, but I know that there's a high correlation. And even if they're not physically absent, there's an emotional absence among men. This is, I think, as men, this is the next evolution for men. And as women, I think it's the next opportunity is to demand a level of presence and connection and a new standard for, you know, who we tolerate as men.
Yes.
But certainly, at the topical level, yeah, people are selfish and self-centered. And I think when you think about the male ego, if we're being totally generalizing here, I think that in the old definition of man, it was about facing physical fear. And that's what a man was, facing danger physically, facing fear
Yes.
physically, right? I think that the real definition of a man, of the masculine, is someone who faces their true fears.
Yes.
And for so many men, their true fears are being vulnerable, having emotions,
yes.
Getting support for their pain.
So
and when you don't do that, the only thing you have left is being selfish and self-centered and protected and absent. So
I think everything you explained there is so necessary, and a lot of women need to hear this, because there's so many times when women are angry, they're sad, they're bitter, they drive themselves crazy thinking, well, how can this man abandon me, and how can he abandon his child, and the deep rooted, the underlying issue is that he's probably got a bad, past, a hard childhood. He's probably been through something. And, realizing that takes a lot, because as a woman who's pregnant, all you can think about is, well, I'm having a baby, you should be present. I don't care about whatever you're going through right now. You need to man up right now, But there is, for many absent fathers, there is a lot of, they've got a lot of issues that they don't seek help for, and it just results in them running away from everything and hurting a lot of people, running away from love, running away from opportunities, not even just with people, work, maybe not having the confidence to do what they are actually capable of, because men are capable of being fathers. But, like you said, if they feel like they're not in that perfect situation, and if they haven't had fathers themselves and have been through stuff, then they'll be unable to do it without support. And that's why what you're doing is so important, coaching men, healing men who have been through these types of situations, and on both sides too, helping them forgive their fathers and maybe even forgive themselves for their own actions. I'm sure you also, work on healing relationships between men and maybe their ex-partners for the sake of the children, helping them to get along and stuff like that. So I think that it's so important that men like you, who have their own powerful stories, help other people and, encourage them to get their feelings out, so they don't get out of control and, to the point where everything just flops in the air and that's it. A child's left growing up without a father, and it passes through the generations. Their children are, don't have a grandfather and all sorts. When somebody is missing, that's it. They're missing from the whole family tree, and it does create a gap. So I think healing is definitely very much needed, and you're doing a great job, and your story is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, thank you. There was one other thing I wanted to say, and by the way, it's interesting. One thing that is inspiring to me is I do see a lot of men out there who are really committed to being present fathers. I see a lot of men out there, and that kind of brings me to one other point that I just wanted to make, which was to your listeners, and to the mothers who are dealing with the kind of father or man that we're talking about. One of the things is that there's an opportunity to look at what this is on both sides, but in this case, for your listeners, for women or for those who are abandoned while pregnant, like what we will tolerate in a man. And one of the things that I notice is that for some of the important women in my life, where we learn about what we tolerate in a man is typically from our father or more important men in our families. And the family that I grew up in, a lot of those men were also absent emotionally. I think there's an opportunity to raise our level of standard for ourselves. And for me, that starts with, instead of focusing out there on what that guy's doing, to focus over here. How can I reconnect with myself and take care of myself and love myself in such a way that I don't tolerate a man who's not present, who happens to leave, was my keep a job, or who isn't going to show up for me emotionally. My wife got pregnant about 3 years ago.
Okay.
So we decided we were trying, and we were really fortunate to get pregnant after about a month.
Wow.
And I'll never forget though, becoming a father has become its own healing journey for a number of reasons. But one thing I wanted to share with your audience was my experience of my wife becoming pregnant. And as I shared, I'm sensitive to feeling abandoned. I never really knew that until I was older and had done a lot of work. But leaving a job or losing someone in my life, it's a painful experience. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in pain, by the way, it looks like being disconnected and sort of motionless and robotic. So that's what pain looks like for me. But my wife, she got pregnant in January of 2013, and I'll never forget, it was about a month or two into the pregnancy, and mind you, I'm a life coach, so I'm constantly thinking about human experience and human development and human emotions, and awareness, consciousness, subconsciousness, all these things, right?
Yes.
So my wife, and as must be the case, I assume with most mothers, there's this point where you rightfully so shift your attention and focus inward, right? Suddenly there's this being inside of you that you are growing, and your emotional and energetic attention shifts to the baby, which I think is very appropriate and natural, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But very subtly, one of the things that I've noticed as a man is that I mean, even as I say it out loud right now, I feel guilty, I should not have these feelings. But I know that inside I was feeling abandoned. Suddenly, my partner, who was my one person, the person that I was most vulnerable to, the person that I counted on, the person that was my partner, probably for the first time in my whole life because of my history. Mm-hmm. There was this sudden energetic shift to this other human. And I remember feeling that and not knowing what to do with it. And this is a life coach. This is a person who has a coach who's done a lot of work around it. And I was having feelings. And right when you feel abandoned, you do two things. You either get really needy, which, my wife she's not really into that. I don't think most women are.
They're not.
They're not looking for needy men.
Definitely not.
Or you go to the other side, which is go away. Mm-hmm. You go away from the pain. And that really got me present to why it occurs at that time. And as I was thinking about abandonment while pregnant, there is a trigger to that. It's not about the child. It's about that man's own stuff.
Yes.
But there's a trigger there. And I even, thinking of the most horrific terms when men will even attack the child in utero.
Yes.
And I thought about, how could you do that? But at a level of pain and dysfunction at a certain level, there's this horrific response, and I think it's rooted in that painful abandonment feelings that are triggered and then reacting to that.
Yes. What you said, I can totally understand what you mean. It doesn't sound nice because as women we want to see men as, being these superheroes and not having these kind of feelings. But what you just explained to me and the way you explained it, I can totally understand where you're coming from, because like you said, it was just you and your wife. And obviously with the baby being inside of her, it can feel like they are one and you are on the outside. So I do understand where that sense of abandonment, could come from. I do understand that. And I appreciate you explaining that to me, because you hear about, so many men saying that they feel neglected by their partners during pregnancy, and their partners say, well, that's not true. But it's...
Or that's ridiculous, I'm growing up baby.
Yeah. So you definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. So that
the opportunity that was different for me, and I think that, I hope that there's some men that listen, it's like, just get some help.
Yeah.
Like, get supported, talk to a person, talk to another father.
Yeah.
Talk to, if you're really awesome, like, talk to a therapist.
Exactly.
And walk through that experience and get supported, even though it might be really scary or you don't think you need it. To get support through that experience, because getting support through that experience, I mean, I could not have been happier as a father. I could not be happier on the day she was born. And to be with her is like, it's the best thing ever to be a father to my daughter. It's great.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I definitely agree with you. Absent fathers, they do need some support. They do need to go and see a therapist and talk about their past issues and their problems. And the world would be a better place, well, some of the world anyway. But, a lot of problems do stem from people, growing up without fathers. And I think that what you said about making your mom stop off to allow you to shave before you met your dad, that was definitely such a manly thing to do. And I thought to myself, well, fathers normally teach their sons how to shave. And I felt like, well, maybe you did that because you wanted to show him, well, look, I learned something without you before you met him, So I think that was great. And I think
it's about shaving, because, there are certain things, I think, as a child that you really associate with the father. And certainly, from a boy's perspective, shaving is definitely something like that. Like, I remember, as a kid, I always was trying to figure out how to do things like that on my own. Like golf. Golf is something that I picked up when I was like 16, and, I was like, that's like a thing, Luckily, I played a lot of baseball. I don't think they play much of that in the UK, but...
No, not really.
Yeah. And it was, luckily I had coaches and other father figures that came through along the way. And I think that's one thing I would share with someone who's abandoned while pregnant, is that, or single mothers, is that your kid's going to be fine. Like, that they came into this life with this set of circumstances, and we all have some kind of set of circumstances. And my favorite part about the podcast and the people that I work with, men and women that grew up with an absent parent, is that, yes, there are impacts. There is the procrastination, and there's the not enough, and there's the hyper-analysis and the relationship to money that's all about, safety and a lot of fear there.
Yeah.
But there's also superpowers that come from that experience that are enormous gifts, like empathy and intuition and grit and leadership ability.
Definitely.
So I think that as you can, walk through your path and believe that you are here for something and that you can get supported, it can be more than just a gift. It can be the gift of your life. For me, without an absent father, I would not be who I am. I wouldn't get to do the work that I do. I wouldn't be talking to you about this.
It's true. I think your purpose and mine throughout these experiences is to help other people. So I'm so grateful that I was able to connect with you and that we're able to talk about our experiences and to share them with my listeners and hopefully do more things together in the future, because I do feel like there is so much more awareness that we can create about this, and there's so many more people that we can reach out to and help and support. So yeah, it's really important that we keep talking about this and keep sharing our experiences, because you never know who you're helping in the process.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah, but I hope that the thing that your listeners take away, especially people who are abandoned while pregnant, is that it might be hard, but it's going to be okay. Like, your kid's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with you. Like, it's not your fault that somebody's absent. And it doesn't mean anything about you. Like, it doesn't mean anything about you.
Exactly. It's true. It doesn't define who you are as a woman, as a person. It's true. It is about the person who is not there. And you're right. I think it's really important that everybody remembers that, including the children growing up without fathers, because there are some of them who are blaming themselves, and it's got nothing to do with them, and it's so sad. Oh, thank you, Rodney. You have been like a breath of fresh air. You have been like a bag full of golden answers. And I know that a lot of frustration will be released from many women who listen to this podcast, and maybe even more empathy will be instilled in them when they realise that their absent father is actually just a man who is going through a lot of serious, deep-rooted issues. And maybe it might even create a bit more peace inside of them, because I think the number one thing that most women who have been abandoned during their pregnancies feel is, rage, real anger. And I think when you hear something that's so sad, a sad story about why fathers are, most of them are incapable, the ones who are absent are incapable of being fathers, it does create a bit of understanding, and maybe even make the the single mother feel a bit stronger within herself, because she thinks, well, you know what, I haven't run away, and I've gone through this and that in my past, because everybody goes through stuff, and I'm still sticking it out. So you're right, ultimately the single mother and her child will be okay. And yes, listeners, I hope that you do take that away with you from this podcast. You will be okay.
You're so welcome.
Oh, thanks, Rodney.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies, well, thank you for listening to today's Abandoned Pregnant podcast with myself and my special guest, Rodney Mueller. If you have any questions for us that you'd like answered, or any information that you'd like from us, then please just DM over your questions or your messages to me at IG or at Kandy.Dolor, or you can send them over to Rodney Mueller on Instagram as well, as we will definitely be back with a live Q&A on Instagram and Facebook for you all. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed today's show, and take care.
a therapist on call. There's a lot of people around me. Right?
and everything will be fine. Thank you so much, Rodney, for joining us today.